Have you ever found yourself wondering, who did the narcissist end up with after me? Maybe you've looked at their new relationship on social media and thought they finally changed. Maybe you've convinced yourself that they found someone better, someone they could truly love, while you were left carrying the pain. If you've had those thoughts, you're not alone. It's one of the most common questions people ask after leaving a narcissistic relationship. The answer, however, is rarely what it appears to be. Today, we're going to look beyond the carefully crafted image that narcissists often present to the world. One of the biggest misconceptions people have after a relationship with a narcissist is believing that the narcissist eventually finds their perfect match. It is incredibly common to look at their next relationship and assume they have finally become the loving, attentive, and emotionally available partner you always hoped they could be. This belief can be deeply painful because it often leaves survivors wondering, why couldn't they be that person with me? The truth is that narcissistic relationship patterns are not built on genuine emotional connection. They are built on meeting the narcissist's psychological needs, and those needs do not suddenly disappear simply because there is a new partner. Narcissists often choose people who provide what psychologists sometimes call narcissistic supply. That supply can come in many forms. It might be admiration, constant attention, financial stability, social status, emotional caretaking, or someone who is willing to overlook unhealthy behavior. The person they end up with is rarely selected because of deep compatibility or authentic love. Instead, they are often chosen because they fulfill a particular role that benefits the narcissist's sense of control, importance, or security. This is why comparing yourself to the narcissist's new partner is so misleading. You may believe that the new person is smarter, more attractive, more patient, or somehow more deserving of love. In reality, the narcissist is usually responding to what they need at that specific moment in their life. If they are seeking financial security, they may pursue someone financially successful. If they want admiration, they may choose someone who idealizes them. If they need someone who is unlikely to challenge their behavior, they may gravitate toward a partner with weak boundaries or a strong desire to please others. Many survivors mistakenly believe that the narcissist has finally matured because the new relationship appears perfect from the outside. But appearances are often carefully managed. Narcissists are frequently concerned with image, and they understand the value of creating the impression that everything is wonderful. Social media posts, smiling photographs, expensive vacations, and public displays of affection tell us almost nothing about the emotional reality of a relationship. What happens behind closed doors is often very different from what the outside world is allowed to see. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is that the narcissist's choice of a new partner is never a measure of your value. Their relationships are driven by their own unresolved patterns, emotional limitations, and need for validation. The fact that they are with someone else does not mean they suddenly became capable of empathy, accountability, or healthy intimacy. It simply means they found another person who currently meets the emotional needs that drive their behavior. Understanding this can help shift the focus away from wondering who they ended up with and back toward the healing that allows you to reclaim your own peace, confidence, and sense of self. One of the most important truths to understand about narcissistic relationships is that they are not driven by love in the way most people understand it. Healthy love is built on empathy, trust, mutual respect, emotional safety, and the willingness to grow together through life's challenges. It requires two people to see each other as equals, each with their own thoughts, feelings, and needs. A narcissist, however, often approaches relationships from a very different perspective. Their primary focus is not on creating a deep emotional bond, but on finding someone who can meet their psychological needs and help regulate their fragile sense of self-worth. This is why many experts describe narcissistic relationships as being fueled by what is often called narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply is the admiration, attention, validation, control, or emotional energy that helps the narcissist feel important, powerful, or secure. It can come from compliments, praise, success by association, financial support, constant reassurance, or even the emotional reactions they provoke in others. Whether the attention is positive or negative, it still reinforces their sense of significance. At the beginning of a relationship, this dynamic can be difficult to recognize because narcissists are often exceptionally charming. They may shower a new partner with affection, admiration, and promises about the future. This intense period of attention can feel like genuine love, but it is often rooted in idealization rather than true emotional intimacy. During this stage, the narcissist sees the other person as someone who can fulfill their emotional needs and reinforce the image they want to have of themselves. The difficulty begins when the relationship naturally becomes more realistic. Every healthy relationship eventually reaches a point where both people reveal imperfections, express different opinions, and require mutual understanding. For emotionally healthy individuals, this is a normal part of building a lasting partnership. For a narcissist, however, these moments may feel threatening because they challenge the fantasy they created. Instead of adapting with empathy and compromise, they may become critical, dismissive, defensive, or controlling in an attempt to restore the dynamic that benefits them. This pattern explains why many people leave narcissistic relationships feeling emotionally exhausted and confused. They spend enormous amounts of energy trying to regain the warmth and affection that existed at the beginning, believing that if they try harder, communicate better, or become more understanding, the relationship will return to what it once seemed to be. Unfortunately, the issue was never a lack of effort on their part. The relationship was structured around the narcissist's need for validation rather than a shared commitment to emotional connection. Understanding this difference can be incredibly freeing. It helps explain why the narcissist's relationships often follow similar cycles regardless of who the partner is. The names and faces may change, but the underlying motivation remains remarkably consistent. The relationship is centered on maintaining the narcissist's emotional supply, not on creating the kind of secure, balanced, and compassionate love that allows two people to genuinely thrive together. One of the most painful beliefs that people carry after leaving a narcissistic relationship is the idea that the narcissist's new partner must somehow be better than they were. It is an understandable thought because narcissists often make sure you see just enough of their new relationship to trigger self-doubt. They may post endless pictures online, speak glowingly about their new partner, or even make indirect comparisons designed to leave you questioning your own worth. This can create the illusion that they have finally found the person who was able to give them everything they wanted, while you were somehow not enough. But this belief is based on appearances, not reality. The first thing to remember is that narcissists are often highly invested in managing how other people perceive them. Their new relationship may be presented as perfect because maintaining that image serves several purposes. It protects their reputation, helps them avoid accountability for past behavior, and can even provoke feelings of jealousy or regret in former partners. The happier they appear on the surface, the more likely others are to assume that the previous relationship ended because of you rather than because of their unhealthy patterns. This carefully constructed image is often far more polished than the actual emotional reality behind closed doors. Many survivors compare themselves to the new partner without having any real knowledge of what that relationship is actually like. They imagine that the narcissist has become more patient, more caring, more emotionally available, or more faithful. In reality, people with strong narcissistic traits rarely undergo such dramatic changes without deep self-awareness, genuine accountability, and long-term therapeutic work. Simply entering a new relationship does not erase years of established behavior patterns. The same emotional limitations that existed before are usually still present. The narcissist's choice of a new partner is typically based on what best serves their needs at that particular stage of life. If they are seeking admiration, they may choose someone who constantly praises them. If they need financial stability, they may become involved with someone who is financially secure. If they want to maintain a certain public image, they may pursue someone whose appearance, career, or social status enhances their reputation. Sometimes they choose a partner who has difficulty setting boundaries because that makes control easier. None of these choices determine the value of the new partner, and they certainly do not diminish your own value. They simply reflect the narcissist's priorities. It is also important to recognize that every relationship begins with a honeymoon phase. During this period, the narcissist may appear attentive, generous, affectionate, and deeply invested. This is often the same version of them that you first experienced. Looking back, you may remember a time when you believed you had found someone extraordinary. The compliments felt sincere, the attention felt exciting, and the future seemed full of promise. Over time, however, the relationship changed. Criticism increased, empathy decreased, manipulation became more common, and you found yourself trying harder just to keep the peace. The same cycle often repeats itself because the underlying dynamics have not changed. Many survivors assume that if the new relationship has lasted longer than theirs, it must be healthier. Length, however, is not the same as quality. Some narcissistic relationships continue for years because both people become trapped in unhealthy patterns. One partner may fear being alone, while the other enjoys maintaining control. In other situations, financial dependence, children, family expectations, or social pressure keep the relationship together. From the outside, people may admire the couple for staying together, while privately both individuals experience loneliness, resentment, or emotional exhaustion. The most damaging comparison you can make is believing that someone else's place in the narcissist's life determines your own worth. Your value has never depended on whether a narcissist chose you, discarded you, or replaced you. Their decisions are guided by their own emotional needs, insecurities, and patterns of behavior, not by an objective measure of another person's goodness or lovability. When you begin to understand this, the focus slowly shifts away from the question of who they ended up with and toward a far more meaningful question: how you can rebuild a life where your self-worth is no longer defined by the approval or rejection of someone who was never capable of offering consistently healthy love. One of the most difficult realities for survivors to accept is that narcissists often repeat the same relationship patterns, regardless of who their partner is. When you see them with someone new, it is easy to imagine that this relationship is somehow different, that they have finally learned from the past, become more emotionally mature, or discovered what real love looks like. But personality patterns that have developed over many years do not simply disappear because there is a new person in the picture. Without genuine self-awareness, accountability, and a long-term commitment to change, the same unhealthy dynamics usually continue to unfold. Most narcissistic relationships begin with an intense period of idealization. During this stage, the narcissist may seem incredibly attentive, affectionate, and interested in every detail of the other person's life. They often make their partner feel uniquely special, deeply understood, and emotionally safe. They may communicate constantly, offer excessive compliments, make exciting future plans, or behave as though they have finally found their soulmate. For someone who has never experienced this level of attention before, it can feel almost magical. However, this stage is often less about genuine intimacy and more about securing the attachment and admiration they crave. As time passes, the relationship naturally becomes more realistic. Every person has flaws, disagreements arise, and emotional needs become more balanced. This is where healthy relationships deepen through communication, compromise, and empathy. A narcissist, however, may experience this normal shift as a threat. Instead of accepting their partner as a complete human being with independent thoughts and emotions, they may begin focusing on perceived imperfections. The admiration that once came so easily starts to decline, and frustration replaces excitement. This is often when devaluation begins. The same partner who was once described as perfect may suddenly become the target of criticism, blame, sarcasm, or emotional distance. Small mistakes are exaggerated. Boundaries are viewed as acts of disloyalty. Independent opinions are interpreted as disrespect. The partner may find themselves constantly trying to avoid conflict, walking on eggshells, and wondering what happened to the loving person they first met. Many survivors describe this stage as deeply confusing because the contrast between the beginning and the present feels impossible to understand. Manipulation also becomes increasingly common during this phase. Gaslighting may cause the partner to question their own memory or perception of events. Silent treatment may be used as punishment. Triangulation can introduce jealousy or competition by involving former partners, friends, or even coworkers. Emotional inconsistency keeps the partner hoping that the warmth from the beginning will eventually return. These patterns are not random. They often serve to maintain control and keep the relationship centered around the narcissist's emotional needs. Eventually, some relationships end through a sudden discard, while others continue in an unhealthy cycle for years. Even if the narcissist leaves one partner and quickly moves on to another, the underlying relationship pattern usually remains remarkably similar. The names change, the circumstances change, and the public image may change, but the emotional script often stays the same. This is why seeing a narcissist with someone new should never be mistaken as evidence that they have become a fundamentally different partner. Without meaningful personal change, they are far more likely to repeat familiar behaviors than to create the emotionally healthy relationship that they continue to present to the outside world. Many people assume that narcissists always move on to happier, more successful relationships and spend the rest of their lives surrounded by admiration and attention. This belief can be incredibly discouraging for survivors because it creates the impression that the narcissist escaped all consequences while the person they hurt is left to recover alone. The reality, however, is often much more complicated. While narcissists may appear to have exciting relationships from the outside, appearances rarely reveal the emotional quality of those relationships. A relationship can look perfect in public while being deeply unhealthy in private. One reason narcissists often remain in long-term relationships is not because they have found genuine love, but because the relationship continues to serve an important purpose in their lives. It may provide financial security, social status, a stable home environment, or someone who consistently meets their emotional needs without asking for much in return. In some cases, both partners become locked into an unhealthy dynamic where leaving feels more frightening than staying. Fear of loneliness, concern about public image, shared responsibilities, or emotional dependence can all keep a relationship together long after genuine intimacy has disappeared. It is also important to understand that narcissists often struggle with authentic emotional closeness. Healthy intimacy requires vulnerability, empathy, accountability, and the ability to tolerate criticism without seeing it as a personal attack. These qualities are difficult for someone with strong narcissistic traits because they often protect themselves through defensiveness, denial, blame, or emotional control. As a result, even when they remain in a relationship for many years, they may never experience the deep mutual trust and emotional safety that define a truly healthy partnership. Over time, many narcissists become increasingly isolated in their relationships. Friends may distance themselves after witnessing repeated conflicts or manipulative behavior. Family members may limit contact to protect their own emotional well-being. Romantic partners may stop sharing their true thoughts and feelings because they know those conversations often lead to criticism, arguments, or emotional punishment. The narcissist may still be surrounded by people, but genuine